the question is, what should love look like? If we had an environment that people loved working in, what would we do differently? Or what could we do more of or less of that would create that experience? Because it should be obvious. I mean, shouldn't it? If I say to you, Sumita, let me tell you about my company. I love this place. I love it. Don't you think chances are pretty good that I'm going to be working harder, being more creative, being more enthusiastic, being more committed, more engaged, all these things that we've been measuring?
Welcome to another episode of the peopleHum interview series. I'm your host Sumita Mariam, and let's begin with a quick introduction of peopleHum. peopleHum is an end-to-end, one-view integrated human capital management automation platform, the winner of the 2019 Global Code Award for HCM, that is specifically built for crafted employee experiences and the future of work. We run the peopleHum blog and video channel, which receives upwards of 200,000 visitors a year, and publish around 2 interviews with well-known names globally every month. And now for our guest, listed as one of Inc.'s global top 50 leadership and management experts, Steve Farber is a leadership pioneer, strategist, keynote speaker, and best-selling author on extreme leadership. His expertise is in creating organizational cultures where leadership is not just an opportunity and obligation for those in authority, but for everyone at all levels. Steve is the president of Extreme Leadership Inc. and the founder and chairman of the Extreme Leadership Institute, organizations devoted to the cultivation and development of extreme leaders around the world. We are happy and honored to have him on our interview series today. Welcome, Steve. We are so happy to have you.
Thank you, Sumita. Real pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you so much. The pleasure is absolutely ours. And moving on to the interview, Steve, the first question I have for you. It's a very interesting name, the Extreme Leadership Institute. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Sure. So the phrase extreme leadership is really kind of the name of my entire platform. So I've written 4 books. Yeah. The Radical Leap, The Radical Edge, Greater Than Yourself, and Love is Just Damn Good Business. And I've been teaching this stuff in some form or another for 30 years. I've been involved in the field of leadership development, so I've had the opportunity to work with just about every kind of company and every kind of industry, various parts of the world. I don't claim to have it all figured out, but one thing I do know is that leadership, so to get to the answer of your question, so leadership is an extreme act. And my concern is that, we use the word leadership too loosely. We use it as a label or a title that we slap on people. And we say, okay, now you're a leader. We look at where you are on the org chart and we say, leader. And there's much more to it than that. Leadership, if we're really doing it, is about, on some level, it's about the act of transformation. It's an extreme thing. So extreme leadership is really just my way of saying real leadership, beyond position or title. A person, regardless of their position or title, who steps up to change things for the better, often at the risk of personal failure or sacrifice. So the Extreme Leadership Institute is our organization that takes this idea and operationalizes it in companies. So we help create cultures where, again, leadership is not the sole domain of the people sitting at the top of the company, but it's a way to engage everybody in the act of changing their piece of the world for the better. So that could be the world of their team, it could be the world of their company, it could be the world, capital T, capital W, whatever it is. But if we're not trying to do that, I don't know that we can legitimately call ourselves leaders. So, we've got an incredible team, and we've helped over 28 companies make it onto Best Place to Work lists by using this methodology that we've been teaching for quite some time now.
Wow. So you think every single employee in an organization has to be a leader within themselves to, make that change happen?
Well, I think that it's situational, right? So I think everybody has the opportunity to do that in their own sphere. What I do know for certain is that just because somebody, say, has the title of CEO doesn't automatically make him or her a leader, right? So if you flip that around and say, well, if if it's not something that automatically comes with the territory, then isn't it also true that people who don't have a position or title can actually lead in the absence of that? And I think it's becoming more and more, I would say, conventional wisdom that the answer is yes. That doesn't mean that if I'm working at a call center, for example, that I'm going to be making decisions on the strategic level that will affect the whole company. But I can make leadership decisions within my sphere and set the right kind of example and enlist people around me to help change things for the better. That's a leadership act too. It's just a different scope and scale. That doesn't mean that that everybody when given the opportunity, will automatically rise to the occasion. I mean, it takes knowledge, it takes skill, it takes learning, it takes trial and error. But companies that engage everybody in that kind of learning experience and that kind of expectation are going to have a significant competitive advantage.
That's a beautiful perspective to leadership, and I mean, that's wonderful. And we have a lot of opinions about the inclusive term, the future of work. So it's
Future of work.
Yeah, it's different for different people. So what is your take on this, all-inclusive term, the future of work?
Well, I think there absolutely will be a future of work. So that's the good news. Yeah, I think it's a really important discussion to have. The way that we typically have it is similar to the question that you just asked, which is, what will the future of work be? How is the landscape going to be different, especially now given what hopefully will be soon the post-coronavirus era, right? How will work be different? And we've had all kinds of great conversations about there'll be a new combination of live and virtual, of actually sitting in the same room and breathing the same oxygen and using platforms like Zoom to connect with each other. There'll be more. We've broken down the resistance to virtual teams, for example, because we've had to, and now people are discovering that, wait a minute, I'm a lot more productive when I'm at home, and my team is more productive when they're at home. So why do I need to spend money on office space to bring everybody together every day? Maybe there's another way of doing it. So these are all great conversations. But here's my concern about the question. We tend to answer it in the way that I just answered it.
Yeah.
Given where we are now, what do we predict the future of work to be? And it's a valid question, but I think we need to be focusing more on, and this is true in every company, and I've been encouraging my clients to do this, to really ask the question, what kind of future do we want to create?
Yeah.
Predicting the future is one thing. Creating the future is the opportunity, right? So given everything that we know and the experience that we've had so far, what do we want to do together, and how do we want to do it down the road when this whole virus thing is over, for example? What do we want to create together? That is a leadership question, right? So vision, we've all known for a long time that great leaders have a vision of the future and are able to communicate that, articulate it, communicate it, and engage people in it. The concept of vision, again, it's not about a crystal ball thing. It's not about predicting where we're going to go. It's about trying to answer what future can we create together that's going to be markedly better than the present? What do we want to do together? So I think that's a question that all of us should be asking on our teams. What do we want our future of work to look like? Given the market that we're in, given the history that we have, given the technology that we work with, given the challenges that we face, given where we are on, are we making a lot of money now, or are we trying to survive? Or are we, these are all different everywhere we go, but we're not asking that question very often. And that's not to deny the challenge of the present. We need to acknowledge that as well. But again, given that, what do we want to create? And we'll determine what the future of work is.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I think it's time to actually, stop adding to the theory and, get to the practical side of it and, start doing that part. Yeah, so that's wonderful. So, coming to another part, another conversation. So how do you think organizations can, build an employer brand from the inside?
Yeah, of course, that all comes down to a question of what culture do you want to create, right? Culture is what, as business people, we're very prone to buzzwords. We use them, they come and go, and culture is, not that culture is anything new, but it's a rather new buzzword. We're all talking about how important culture is for all the right reasons, because it is important. The fact of the matter is you have a culture. It's not about creating a culture. You have a culture. Everybody has a culture. If you're a solopreneur, you're one person in your company, you have a culture. The way that you interact with your clients and vendors and all that, that's a cultural thing. So this is about culture by design. What kind of culture do we want to create? And does that culture serve us in our mission, in our strategy, and are we creating a culture that attracts and retains the best possible talent? So that's the context for it. In my work, what I've found is the most significant thing that any organization can do, and I don't care what kind of industry they're in, is to create an environment that people love working in. So, my most recent book, which came out in September of 2019, is called Love is Just Damn Good Business. And the reason I titled the book that way is because love is just damn good business. That's why. So most of us are not accustomed to using the word love and business in the same sentence. And I think that is, I understand where it comes from. I understand the concerns about, it seems touchy-feely, it seems abstract, it seems, if everybody loves working here, then nobody's accountable and people can do whatever the hell they want. That's not what this is. This is not love as a sentiment. It's about love as a practice and a discipline. So here's the logic for it. As business people, as companies, our lifeblood is having customers or clients who love what we do for them. That's the first thing we have to grasp, and I hope we all understand that by now. If a customer says, yeah, you're okay, I'm satisfied, we're dead. When they love us, when they love the product, the service, the solutions that we provide for them, the technology that we offer, the relationships that we create, when they love our ability to solve their problems, that's where all of the things we look for as business people, that's where it all comes from. That's where the money comes from, that's where the referrals come from, that's where the buzz factor comes from, that's where the great recruiting talent comes from. So I think we can agree that that's the objective, that's what we want. But the only way to really create that in a meaningful and sustainable way over time for our customers is to create a culture that people love working in.
Yeah.
And the only way that I can either create or contribute to that culture as a leader, and remember, leader at any level, is if I have it myself first. I have to have that connection to my work. So all of this gets very personal very quickly. So the key here is not just to recognize that this is an important thing, but to figure out ways that we can operationalize it in the way that we do business. So the question is, what should love look like? If we had an environment that people loved working in, what would we do differently? Or what could we do more of or less of that would create that experience? Because it should be obvious. I mean, shouldn't it? If I say to you, Sumita, let me tell you about my company. I love this place. I love it. Don't you think chances are pretty good that I'm going to be working harder, being more creative, being more enthusiastic, being more committed, more engaged, all these things that we've been measuring forever and ever? Of course. And the thing is that if that's done right, accountability, which is another word that we really love nowadays, the accountability factor goes up. Because if I really love this place, I'm going to hold myself ridiculously accountable to doing great things. And I'm going to hold my peers accountable to that too, because I don't want to compromise what we're doing here because I love it that much. And we can consciously and intentionally create environments that get closer and closer to that ideal. And if we could do that, it takes care of everything that we've been looking at for, all the engagement numbers and the retention and the recruitment and all these important things that are often relegated to HR issues. And it goes, wait, it's not about this is not HR's job to make that happen. It's all of our responsibilities to create that kind of culture.
Yeah, wow. Love is a damn good business. So, so Steve, let me just ask you this: where do you think that moment, or the first link of where does the disengagement start for employees? Where do you think it's the starting point?
Wow, I don't think there is any one particular starting point. There are a lot of categories for that. One is if people meaning the employees of the organization, perceive a disconnect between the words that they hear from the positional leadership in the company and the actions that they see. So, for example, every company has their mission, vision, and values by now. Every company has that. So you have this lovely, value statement, for example, that says things like, integrity is important to us, and honesty, and responsiveness, and teamwork. There's all variations on the theme. And through the tone of my voice, I hope I'm not sounding cynical about that, because I'm not. I mean, it's important to lay those out. But that's the starting point. That's not the end. It's not, let's write out the value statement, laminate it, and then hand it out to everybody, and then we can move on to the next thing. Those should be operating principles, right? So on one level, if I work here and I see, for example, that one of the values of the company says something like, we treat everybody with dignity and respect. And I see my boss, or I see the leader of the company treating people like dirt, berating them in public, whatever, then everything begins to break down, because it creates a doubt in me. It says, this is not authentic. You're saying one thing and you're doing another. And therefore, your credibility, leader, company, in my eyes, gets damaged. I begin to back away. And it becomes more and more of, this is what I got to do to make money, to live my life in evenings and weekends. And what a terrible waste of human experience, right? So that's one, very broad category. And which is a category that's within our control. I mean, we could actually do something about that. And then, there are times when there are things that are out of our control. Economic change, a disastrous, calamity like many companies are experiencing right now. As much as I love the place, if I'm afraid for my own survival, I'm down at the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and now I'm concerned about shelter, for example. Then I'm gonna be. A lot of people are going to disengage there as well if they don't feel supported through that, at least emotionally supported through that. That's a little less in our control. Now, how we deal with it and how we support people and how we communicate with people is always within our control, but it's certainly a lot more challenging, right? So I think the primary thing is if I feel like I'm working for a place that doesn't value me, that takes me for granted, that keeps me in the dark and doesn't tell me the truth about what's going on. And what makes that all worse is if at the same time I look at all the the communication in the company and I see them describing themselves as being the opposite of that, right? Being transparent and inclusive and appreciative of people, but I don't experience it.
Yeah, that's right. That's so right. And I love your views about all of this. So just out of curiosity, what is your opinion on critical feedback given to employees? And just in addition to that, how can a leader ensure that their feedback translates to impact?
Yeah. Feedback is something that we all know we need, and very few of us want to get it. Right? And it's a discipline to get ourselves to the point where we can receive feedback, no matter how we get it. So if we get it through survey, or we get it through Net Promoter Score, or we get it through whatever, we know that we need the feedback. We want to know we have to hear what our customers' experience is from our customers. Great. And then if the feedback is terrific, I get a 10 on the Net Promoter Score, then, applause, applause, celebration, celebration. But if it's anything less than that, we know we need it, but that doesn't mean that we like it. So I think the first step is to come to terms with that. Don't wait for your own inner psychology to switch and say, I can't wait for people to criticize me, because that's never going to happen. Well, we have to get to the point. We have to get to the point of being willing to hear it anyway, and understand that this is going to be good for us. So I have a very specific suggestion around this. In many organizations, the way that leaders typically get feedback from their teams, or teams get feedback from their peers, from each other, is through some kind of a 360 assessment, right? Which is great. I think those are really, really helpful. But the problem in many, if not most places, is that that's the only way that they get feedback. So every so often you do the survey, whatever it is. It could be, the very famous leadership practices inventory by Kouzes and Posner. It could be just an employee opinion survey. It could be any number of things. And then we do that periodically, and we collect the feedback, and we look at the charts and the graphs, and we can get some lessons out of that. But if that's all we do, we're missing the boat. Instead, I suggest that we use those kinds of things to give us a hint as to what's going on, and then, and this is the challenging part, to seek out that feedback directly from the people you need feedback from. So to say, for example, to my team, let's say I've been working with the team for a while, maybe I'm a new leader, this is a new role for me, we've been working together for 6 months. What about gathering that team together, either in the same physical space or on Zoom, which could even be more challenging, and to just ask the question, how am I doing? How am I doing? I've been in this leadership role for 6 months. Tell me where I'm doing a good job, and tell me where I suck. And to make it a habit of soliciting that kind of feedback frequently. Because if we could do that, then there are a number of things that are happening all at the same time. Number one, and this is kind of counterintuitive for a lot of people, I'm actually establishing a stronger connection with my team by my willingness to ask the question, by my my true, authentic vulnerability in that, and being willing to hear the criticism. And so I'm establishing a greater connection there. The other thing that I'm doing simultaneously is I'm establishing a higher standard in communication for everybody. Because in my doing that, I'm saying it's okay for us to get this feedback from each other. I'm using myself as the, depending on how you want to think about it, either the sacrificial lamb or the example, however you want to think about it. But then I'm more likely to get honest feedback.
Yeah.
And then once I get that feedback, I have to do something with it. That, by the way, that doesn't mean that all the feedback is correct. It doesn't mean that I'm going to, that now my responsibility is to take, this long list of things that I just heard from people, and then implement every one of them. But I'm going to see things on there that I know I can do something about, and I know I can respond to, and I can be transparent as to what I agree with, what I don't, what I'm going to try to do, and what I need you to hold me accountable for. And nobody expects perfection. This is all about, it's all about trial and error. And if we try to appear to be perfect, we're going to be suspect, because everybody knows there's no such thing. So instead, I know I'm not perfect, so help me get better, because that's all we can ask for. And it's a very powerful thing. By the way, this is not just kind of a vague theory. I've had clients do this over and over again throughout the years, and so I've learned a couple of things. I can't offer this as a prescription, because I think you really have to be ready to do this. And the key to making it work is to, when you get that feedback, don't argue, don't defend, don't interrupt, just say thank you and receive it. Because the minute you appear to be defensive, the whole thing falls apart, and pretty soon you don't get any answers anymore. You get this. Oh, you're great.
Yeah.
You're fantastic. Thanks for asking. And that's the caution sign. If you ask this of your team, for example, and all you get is, I can't think of a thing, they're lying to you. Or they're trying to not hurt your feelings, or even worse, they don't trust you. They hear you asking the question, but they don't really believe that you want the answer. So if people say to you, everything's perfect, I once told a client, I suggested to him that he actually get down on his knees and beg his senior management team to tell him the truth, because they were just sugarcoating everything and he wasn't getting anything. I don't know if he actually did that or not, but he should have. So that's the way that we get feedback that we can really implement, and at the same time deepen the connection that we have with the very people who are giving us the feedback.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, and that is, a fantastic way for, building relationships, professional and personal, and, to build each other up when we are, working in a firm as a team, etc. So to be honest in communicating, how you work, how I work. Do you want me to change something so that we can work things out better? So I think that's a very valid point, and that's a very fresh perspective that I'm hearing, because, when it comes to feedback, we have 1,000 different opinions from, 10 different people, because everyone has like 100 opinions. So yeah, that's an absolutely fresh perspective. And Steve,
Yeah.
just to kind of wrap up the interview process, if you have any last sound bites that you would like to leave our audience.
Sure. It's more than a soundbite. This is a way of approaching this whole scenario that we've been talking about in this conversation. Doing what you love is the foundation for this whole thing. It's at the foundation for what great leadership is. It's the foundation for any great, thriving, competitive business. And it looks different in different places. You have to make those translations yourself. So the question is, what should love look like in the way that we do business? And it's not the whole story. Doing what you love is the foundation, but it's not the whole story. So here's the soundbite. Do what you love in the service of people who love what you do. Do what you love in the service of people who love what you do. Yes, you're doing what you love to the greatest degree possible, but you're using that to serve people. This is not about just doing what you love because you want to. I mean, you could argue that criminals are doing what they love to, right? So I'm doing what I love, but I'm using that to serve you, and I'm serving you. This whole idea of servant leadership has been around for a very long time. There really is no other kind of leadership than servant leadership, in my opinion. So I'm doing what I love in the service of people, those people being, clients, customers, colleagues, employees, whatever, okay? Doing what you love in the service of people, and I'm serving you, not just because I feel obligated to, but because I want to have an impact. And the deeper the impact that I have, the more you reciprocate, right? So if I'm doing what I love in the service of you, customer, client, employee, the result will be you love me in return.
Wow.
And when we have clients that step up and say, I love doing business with you, I love your brand, I love your service, I love your team, that's the kind of client that we want. And we want to create more of those. So do what you love in the service of people who love what you do.
Wow. My whole takeaway from this, this interview can be like, I can put it in a capsule form and say, love is just, damn good business. And it comes.
Nicely said.
Yeah. So that was wonderful, Steve. That was wonderful. And thank you so much for coming to our interview series. I really, really appreciate your time and sharing your views with us. It took you so much energy for us also. So, it's been an enriching learning experience for me personally. And if it is for me, surely for our audience also. So I'll stay in touch with you and, have a great day.
Thank you so much. It's been a great pleasure to be here with you.